bit harder, and we need to compensate for the thickness of the band, create a gingival seal, and also push the tissue, or the rubber dam in this case, out of the way. You notice that there is a little void on the mesial facial box area, and we're going to be placing a small customized wedge in that area to shim that and close that area. So I usually just take a piece of wedge and I'll carve it down with a scalpel, or I'll break it and make it into a little splinter shape like this, and then be able to place that little wedge in that particular area. And with a little bit of pressure and a little bit of fooling around here with this, we can usually get that to seal reasonably well. So you can see that that could be sealed for the work that we're going to be doing. We're going to loosen the inner adjusting screw 1/4 turn. This will allow us to expand the amalgam up against the band. We're going to burnish the band also against the contacts with a little ball burnisher. This will provide us with intimate contact and contour of the proximal contact. Proximal contact has to be anatomically shaped properly, so it's going to be oval shaped, and it'll be about 1.5 millimeters tall by about 2 millimeters wide buccolingually. The amalgam I'm going to be using today is called Contour. It's made by Kerr. It's an admixed amalgam, regular set, and I'm using a double spill. So I've speeded this up after placing an appropriate sealing material in the cavity, and I'm showing you how we would condense the amalgam into the cavity area. We're going to want to make sure we push significant force into the boxes and any of the retentive areas, and continue to condense up against the walls and all the retentive features, filling the amalgam above the band. This is going to take approximately 3 double spills of amalgam to fill a cavity of this particular size. As we get closer to the top, we're going to go ahead and switch over to a larger condenser and create a little bit of the shape of the final restoration. You notice that we're making some here, and we're going to use an egg burnisher to confirm the condensation. Make sure we have enough amalgam. If we're a little bit short, we can just add a little bit more amalgam in that particular area and condense it well. As long as you're working efficiently and you're using a regular set alloy instead of a fast set, we'll have plenty of time to add additional amalgam should we see that there is a void or an under-contoured area. The key is to provide more amalgam than you really need so that you have room to work with. Once again, the egg burnisher here just confirming the condensation and providing us with a little bit of additional shape improvements. Now, rather than carving the amalgam now, I'm going to do something a little different perhaps for you, and that is I'm going to clear the occlusal embrasure all the way around the amalgam. Not just in the proximal areas, but on the lingual, facial as well. And this is going to allow us to get the starting shape of the contours, but also is going to clean away the amalgam so that I can remove the band immediately. And some would think, why are you doing that? Why don't you leave the band in place and do some carving right now and wait for the amalgam to get hard? But I feel that by removing the band immediately, we'll have an opportunity to seal gingival areas that might have voids prior to the amalgam getting set. We'll hold the proximal down with a large condenser, and we'll rotate the band out towards the lingual, and simply repeat the process on the mesial side. Now the amalgam is still workable. Now we'll remove the wedges as the last step. So So we're going to use the Explorer now to achieve the appropriate external contours, the facial contour and the lingual contour, utilizing the adjacent tooth structure as a guide, and also keeping in mind what the contour should look like based on our preoperative assessment and the adjacent tooth contours. It's important to try to keep the cusps facing inward a little bit, about 6 millimeters apart from each other buccolingually. After wiping the tooth off just a little bit with a Q-tip, I'm going to use the IPC, and we're going to use an egg burnisher to confirm the condensation. Make sure we have enough amalgam. If we're a little bit short, we can just add a little bit more amalgam, that the gingivals are sealed well, and that the embrasures, as long as you're working efficiently, all using a regular set alloy instead of a fast set, we'll have plenty of time to add additional. And we can also try to get the marginal ridges void or an under-contoured area. So they're not too high. The key is to provide more amalgam than you really need, so you have because we can establish the cusps and the contours once again very well. Egg burnisher here, and I like to look at the cusp from this view and to make sure that I have the appropriate additional shape and cusp height and cusp. Now, rather than carving the amalgam, now I'm going to do something a little different, perhaps for you, and that is I'm going to clear the occlusal embrasure all the way around the amalgam, not just in the proximal areas, but on the lingual, facial as well. In the external areas, this is going to allow us to get the starting following shape the contours on the facial and lingual, but also is going to clean away the amalgam facing out so that I can remove the band immediately. And some would think, why are you doing that? Why don't you leave the band in place and do some carving right now and wait for the amalgam to get hard? But I feel that by removing the band immediately, we'll have an opportunity to seal gingival areas that might have voids prior to the amalgam getting set. Partially on tooth structure, partially on the proximal down with a large condenser, and rotate the band out towards the lingual, and simply repeat the process on the mesial side everywhere. Now the amalgam is, you see that I frequently go back to the Q-tip, still workable. Now we'll remove the wedges, scooping out the fossa with the discoid side. So we're going to use the Explorer now, and I learned this from Dr. Bob Wolcott, who was a professor at UCLA, external contours, the facial contour and the lingual contour. Gives you an idea of where the fossa should be located, and then as a guide, and allows you to create what the positive contours in between the fossa. In other words, the marginal ridge and the adjacent tooth contours, triangular ridge areas. It's important to try to keep this tooth has facing a feature that we all love, the oblique ridge, 6 millimeters apart from each other. Want to make sure that this is replicated in our final amalgam today. After wiping the tooth off, keep an eye on that with a Q-tip. I'm going to use the IPC process. And we're going to use an egg burnisher to confirm the condensation. Make sure we have enough amalgam. If we're a little bit short, we can just add a little bit more amalgam in that particular area and condense it well. In about as long as you're working efficiently and you're using a regular set alloy instead of a fast set, we'll have plenty of time to add additional amalgam should we see that there is a void or starting to become contoured area. The key is to provide more amalgam than you really need, so you have room to work with. Is my preferred tool for developing once again the egg burner. The half Hollenbeck tip can also work quite well. But you do notice how I try to keep the instrument on tooth structure, which is very thin. It's only 200 microns thick, and we're going to make sure that the gingivals are sealed and that the embrasures have been created. All of the embrasures, all 4 of them, the gingival, the occlusal, the buccal, and the linguals. And we can also try to get the marginal ridges leveled out just a little bit as well so that they're not too high. The half Hollenbeck is great on complex amalgams because we can establish the cusps and the contours very, very well. And I like to look at the cusp from this view to make sure that I have the appropriate cusp height and cusp tip location. And the half Hollenbeck is an essential instrument for complex amalgams because it's just so good at doing all of these things. And we're just working the Hollenbeck carver simultaneous areas whenever I'm dealing with marginal areas the appropriate contour to avoid ditching, following, creating the contours in the facial and lingual, and making sure the cuss tips are not facing out too far away from the tooth. Allow this morphology of the discoid, and I'm utilizing to guide you in how you're going to carve this particular amalgam. To find, always keeping in mind, of course, that we have different functional boundaries between the preparations are slightly different, and the unprepared area between the first molar and second molar. I'm going to keep the instrument, but it should give you a pretty good guide on where things partially on amalgam located. So I'm not going to be free-handing this so much, but I'm using the tooth as a guide to achieve a clean margin. I've speeded up the video here, so this is about twice the speed go back to the Q-tip we normally work at excess. But you can get scooping out the fossa, how we're utilizing the discoid side is a great trick. And I learned this from Dr. Bob Wolcott, grooves, for example, at UCLA, and taught me to even place a tertiary groove if you so desire. Give you an idea where the fossa should be located and secondary grooves. Allows you to create the has always worked more out positive contours for me personally. In other words, the marginal ridge creates a nice smooth tooth that triangular ridge the patient will feel okay with. This tooth has run their tongue over the surface, a feature that we all love, the oblique ridge, and we're going to want to make sure that this is replicated in our final amalgam today. So we just use the as we progress cleoid end, and cleoid is derived from the Latin word contour amalgam. Such an excellent material to work with. Works really well to get into the grooves and sets fossa in about 14 the amalgam minutes. Restoration. Gives you the opportunity to do a significant amount of anatomical development. Kind of enjoying, I guess, without carving this and starting to look a little bit more like the original tooth that we started with. Although wiping it off, cleoid. The Q-tip discoid is my preferred tool for developing grooves. Cuss tips are at the right height. Hollenbeck tip. The grooves are centered. Also work quite well, and that the fossa have a depth which is greater than the triangular ridges between them, so that there's this morphological I try to keep the variation on tooth structure. Will give this tooth more of a realistic view. Very thin. It's only 200 microns. All of this takes a little bit of practice, and we're going to make sure that the gingivals are sealed, and I think the embrasures have been created. All the probably many hundreds of these large complex amalgams over the years. Linguals. You tend to get also try to get the marginal ridges leveled out just a little bit. The amalgam now is they're not too high. Near the end of its workability. Hollenbeck quite is great firm on complex amalgams. I don't like because we can establish the burnish, although I'm sure that hardens the surface slightly very well. I'm going to leave this. I like to matte look at the cuss from this view to make sure that I have the appropriate polishing procedure in the next cuss tip video, which will enhance the surface hardness essential and the morphology and smoothness of the surface, because it's just so dental good floss is being used here just to verify the contact. We're just working the Hollenbeck carver. We have a good contact external areas that is make sure that we have wide enough buccolingually and tall enough the contours on the facial and lingual, so that we have making sure the cuss tips are not facing out too far away from the tooth. And we tried to follow the morphology. This is a cleoid discoid amalgam, and I'm utilizing to meet the tooth discoid end or the round end with that cuspid carabelli having a little nuance. The margins. So it's been the boundary fun spending some time with you. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm going to keep the instrument whenever I'm dealing with marginal areas